Welcome to our final section in Isaiah, chapter 56 to 66, what some people call Trito Isaiah. And the real reason that they kind of separate this section out is that it's written to a restored community, which is kind of negating the prophetic ability to see hundreds of years into the future. But nevertheless, they kind of see it as a prophetic encouragement to the community that's been restored, which would be fine as well. It's no longer in exile. But it's concerned with the regulation of the religious life, and it's worship in the homeland with the temple at the centre. That's kind of what this section is concerned with. There's an expectation that there's going to be more exiles that are returning home, and it's promising blessings in chapter 60 to 62, which suggests that the country's still impoverished. It's still wrestling with the challenges that it's had from its years of war and being raped and pillaged, essentially. And there's memories in there of this forced labour and of this pillaging and all the looting and the way that the country has been completely decimated. I want you to imagine for a second the generational trauma that's occurred here. Like, it's easy to kind of think of it historically, but imagine if, even if it's hundreds of years ago, that this is what's happened to us as a nation, that we've grown up in exile in a completely different situation to what we were used to, completely different religion, and being asked to fit into a system that we are not familiar with at all, perhaps being mutilated to serve in various areas of life. Like, it's just too easy to think about it in historical context without bringing it into our day-to-day life and how we would be reacting to that and how going back and what that would feel like. So just thinking about that, that's what's going on. Let's have a look at our timeline again. And we can see here that they're heading back, that the prophets have changed, that they're speaking about different things. And then obviously we're going to get to Ezra and Nehemiah and the rebuilding. So what I'd love us to do now is to pause and read Ezra 1. Because there's no national reconciliation day where all the nations around them are going to come and apologise and make recompense for what they've done. They have to figure out what living in their homeland again looks like. So let's pause and read Ezra chapter 1. So this is around 538 BC, and in Ezra 5, the temple is rebuilt, but there's kind of this national outpouring of grief because some people know from the prophet Ezekiel that the glory of the Lord departed from the temple, and when they built it the first time, there was this incredible manifestation akin to what happened on Mount Sinai when the Lord met and made covenant with the people. But here, that doesn't happen. Now, we can see it in hindsight all being set up for a way for Jesus to come and tear down the man-made structures that are in place and instead have us be the temple of the Holy Spirit and that we together are the temple of the living God. Like, it gets epic, but at this stage, that epicness is not in view. So there's this generational trauma, there's the beginning of the rebuild, and in any rebuild, yes, they get restored in a moment, but restoration is also a process. They get renewed in a moment, but renewal is also a process. They get returned in a moment, but returning in truth is always also a process. Redemption is instant and it is ongoing. So that's kind of what they're facing. Now, as mentioned, some people think that it's not written to them, but talking about like the economic stress that this would have had as well, there was more than just political. There's an influx of refugees and that would have strained the resources of the community that has been so decimated. It's already struggling. And now the recovery and the rebuild, agriculturally, economically, the struggle is going to be exacerbated. Identity stress. For the Jewish mind, they're not returned to their homeland in their same way. They're a vassal of the Persian nation. They're under foreign domination from Babylon, Persians, Greeks, Romans. The former glory hasn't returned to the temple. Like, it's one thing to be returned to the homeland, but in this different state, it just wouldn't have felt right. It's defiled. It's marked by unrighteousness. And now the worship is no longer centralised there because they had to worship in foreign places and still worship Elohim and Yahweh. When they go back, they don't all just centralise around Jerusalem and the temple again. They set up worship where they are, which is a debate that comes into place with the woman in the well at Jesus, and where she says, you guys say that we have to worship in Jerusalem, and what do you say? And Jesus says, well, you've got to worship in spirit and in truth. So there's a long-term picture, but there's an identity anxiety that's occurring right now. Just what's now going to identify them is circumcision, obeying Torah, dietary laws, prayer and fasting, keeping Sabbath. That's now their identity markers rather than geography. So just having a look at the structure of 3rd Isaiah, we've got the preface and the postscript, the place of foreigners in the service of Yahweh. This is revolutionary. We've got Yahweh's challenges concerning the Jerusalem community's life. We've got prayers for Yahweh's forgiveness and restoration. We've got visions of Yahweh acting in judgment. We've got visions of Jerusalem restored, and then the prophet's commission. So in the opening and closing of these chapters, Isaiah offers radical inclusiveness. That's pretty amazing. It starts with a vision for an open community that's marked by obedience to God and the commandments, and embracing foreigners who've taken on the distinctive markers of Yahweh. So even while they've been in exile in Babylon, they've actually evangelized the people around them, and now they've got people returning with them who want to follow Yahweh as well. So, and they're included. Previous laws have been overturned about people who are allowed to be included in worship of Yahweh. So we're going to pause and read some of these incredibly dramatic inclusivity markers toward foreigners. So Isaiah chapter 56, 3-8, Isaiah 66, 19-21. This is complete assimilation into the community of God, transcending racial boundaries.